Welcome back to the Tuxes and Tomahawks podcast. I'm Adam Dorito, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Carl Wheless. He has quite the incredible story, and he kind of comes from the generation below me, but we still kind of remember where we came from. And he's got a fascinating story, and you guys know what I do. I really like to started this whole dark saber production thing, about 15 years ago with my incident at the Air Force Academy, and I've always been fighting for justice in the military and correcting all the things that have gone wrong over the last 20 years during the GWAT. And there's a lot of corrections that need to be done for our generation. And Carl, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I want to thank you, man, because it's a struggle to get some traction with this, with anybody. And I'm glad that you paid attention and that you're giving me the time to tell my story.
Yeah, I mean, and you're one of the OGs, right? You were there in the early 2000s. You were there when shit was real. I mean, I was still watching the news after shit was blowing up in 01 after 9/11. And you even wanted to go back even right before then. So what was your history in the military? Like, where did you come from? Like, who are you? Where did you come from? Like, how did Carl Wheless even start in the Marine Corps to begin with?
All right, cool. Well, it's like this. Back in 83, I ended up enlisting in the Marine Corps Reserve, actually. I was going to go to college and try to become an aviator. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I figured that out pretty quick. Wasn't interested in college. So quit college and spent a little bit of time working with my recruiter, and then went to MOS training. After that, I decided, let's just go active duty and quit playing this game. So I went active duty in Marine Corps. My MOS at the time was 2875, which is funny because I requested 0311, 0331, and 0352, which was infantry, machine gunner, and tow gunner. My ASVAB scores were good, and they had a shortage of missile technicians, so I guess they saw he has an interest in missiles. So they gave me the choice of you can come in as a missile technician or you cannot come in. So like it or not, that's what I took because I wanted to go active duty. And then throughout my career, I ended up going to Okinawa twice. I was at Camp Lejeune. And back in just to clarify too, during this time, all the stuff went down: Beirut, Panama, yep. Somalia, Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I didn't get deployed to any of that stuff. I was like Super Pogue on top of the Super Pogue totem pole.
Felt like you missed the ride.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the early 90s, they had the reduction in force. And so I was just one of those guys that unfortunately got swept up in that. And so transitioned back to the civilian world and, like everybody else, try to figure out what the hell I'm going to do now. I leveraged my training and ended up repairing copiers, fax machines, printers, stuff like that. Was never going to get rich doing it, but it paid the bills.
Yep.
I never wanted to come back in after that. I figured, hey, my time's done. 9/11 happened. That changed everything. And it was quite the fight just to get back in. I'm not even going to go into that long story, but it took about a year and a half, and I ended up joining the Texas Army National Guard right before Iraq kicked off. About
perfect.
A year later.
Great timing.
Yeah, right. And so I enlisted in like barely a week later. I mean, that's when they crossed the berm and went in. So about a year later, my unit got activated. We did training at Fort Hood from August until January. Went to Iraq January 05, left November 05. While I was over there, the Army finally came to its senses and decided, hey, we need to get some more people in. Nobody wants to sign up anymore to get blown up and get hit by IEDs. So
And this was like 05 time frame.
yeah, this is '05.
Yeah, that was right when I was getting ready to join the military in '06. So like it was bad during those years.
Yeah.
Most people don't remember how bad it was in those
Yeah, because that's back
early
when
2000s.
nothing yet was yet up armored, and hardly anybody had, any
There's still
of the,
recon still ripping around in soft top Humvees. Actually, one of my good friends, he got killed in outside of Iraq as a swift boat water operator in the Marine Corps. So he got killed in '05, and then we all joined the year after. You know what I mean? So like we knew what we were getting into, and people thought we were crazy, but you were already in the shit. You already had previous experience to that. So I mean that's pretty heavy, man, because people don't like the kids today in the Army and the Marine Corps and the Air Force, like they do not understand what the 2000s were like post 9/11 immediately.
Yeah, and I went in cleared eye. I knew what I was getting into, but this is in the wake of 9/11.
Yeah.
And I had unfinished business to take care of.
Yep.
So while I was over there for the first time, they requested for people who were on active duty under Title 10 orders, reserve component, who wanted to volunteer to go regular Army, raise their hand. So I did. And I ended up getting released from the National Guard, enlisted into the Army, and January '06 reported to Fort Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to take a moment, too, to say that my condolences to the family of the 4 that were killed in a training accident in Lithuania. That's my old brigade, 1st Brigade, 3rd.
Yeah, that was that. Actually, so I have to go to Carson this weekend, and I actually have to do vehicle training with my guys. And I was a heavy equipment operator in the oil field and everything else. And like one thing a lot of guys now oh yeah, you're driving a 20-ton vehicle. You don't have a CDL. You don't really have any proper training. It's more like pencil whip this, go through this PowerPoint, and then you're driving an armored vehicle. But like I think that incident with the M88 Hercules out there in Lithuania demonstrates that, hey man, there's a reason why we do route planning. There's a reason why those procedures exist, because everything is written in blood. And sometimes when you're complacent about, I've done this a million times and everything else, and driving in the middle of the night, you're not paying attention. You think there's a road there. Next thing you know, you're in a 15-foot water bog and you're trapped in an armored vehicle and you cannot open those doors. And it's really sad that those young guys died out there, and it took them over a week to extract them. If you guys watch the videos out there of them trying to get that vehicle out of that bog, but it's insane. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's coming from Carl. I think he'll agree with me, is that, your training might seem stupid at times, but don't ever be complacent in the tasks you do every day, because everything can kill you in the military.
No, and I'm going to throw this out there. So the guys who brought me up when I was a young dude in the Corps, they were all Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
And, I had this LDO, Maverick, former enlisted guy who became an officer. So he was a captain, and he imparted this wisdom to me. 2 words, simple: complacency kills.
Yes.
And that served me well ever since. And having served with 1st Brigade, 3rd ID, we joke around and call it Fort Swampy for a reason. If you haven't gotten a vehicle stuck at Fort Stewart, then you aren't training right.
Correct.
So it's dangerous, and
it
bothers me when I see online these people who don't have any clue, and they try to make everything into a political issue. Yep. And I'm like, some things need to be off limits. And so, they couldn't get at the Secretary of Defense over the Signal Gate thing, so they wanted to come at him over this. And I'm like, you people just obviously don't understand. You don't understand how dangerous every day just operating these pieces of equipment are. Even in the motor pool, it's dangerous. If you don't
people get run over all the time.
Yeah.
Like you put things up on the wrong jacks. Heck, I was in an airborne unit, and you get really complacent in that. People popping heads off on static lines and getting arms ripped off. I mean, yeah, I saw horrific things in the rigger field of the 19th group, so I would agree that there's actually more deaths in training and driving these vehicles than there are in combat recently, anyway, at least in the last 5 to 10 years. So
yeah, right. So for all the young guys out there who are in the military, listen to this, pay attention and question everything. Even if your leaders are telling you something and you don't think it's right, question it, because in the end, it's your ass. It's your life.
Absolutely.
So you need to make sure you take care of yourself and make sure that the leaders above you are doing you right and doing what they're supposed to be doing. Not saying that's the case in this situation, but just saying that as general advice.
Yeah, and one thing I always review with my guys, even in the oil field too, is like review your basic emergency procedures before you start shift on everything. Like, hey, if our vehicle gets stuck, like, do we keep one of the hatches open so we can evac? Where are the handles? Do we have glow tape on our door so we can see where we're going at night? Like things like that. Like, hey, do I have my quick disconnects on my plate carrier rigged up so that way if shit goes down, like these guys, they kind of cut away, find the door, and get out. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's the little things, you know, and the biggest thing that I've seen, because I was kind of in the same generation as you, like, you know, the early 2000s and then going into now. And it is a completely different environment. I mean, I was still running in the military with basic Vietnam shit, BDUs when I joined, right? And, you know, Ultima all leather black combat boots. And then now we have all the fancy stuff, right? And one thing I always tell guys is that the basic soldiering skills really matter, whether that's, you know, weapon maintenance, land navigation, radio operations, vehicle maintenance. Because if those like 4 things don't work, you are going to be unsuccessful. You can have all the coolest toys in the world that you want, every electronic, every GPS device you can. It doesn't mean anything if you can't shoot, move, and communicate at a basic level. And I think your experience, especially growing up in the early Marine Corps in the 80s, which is still some of the technology we use today, and going into, you know, your experience in Iraq, is that when it comes down to combat operations, the basics and the fundamentals matter.
Absolutely. And the bottom line is nothing replaces the Mark I eyeball and the brain housing group. Use your common sense and look at what's in front of you and pay attention to it. You know, don't think that things are a certain way because somebody's told you something. If you see something that doesn't make sense, doesn't seem right, then pay attention to that and use your common sense.
Absolutely. So Carl, I mean, for the young guys that listen to this podcast, like, what was your experience like in the early years of Iraq? Because even I missed out on that. You know, some of my friends got to go because they went enlisted. I decided to go the officer route because I'm an idiot, you know, initially. But like, what was that like? Because most guys, you know, they have the remnants of the end of Afghanistan, and that's about it. But like, you were in a full-blown urban conventional warfare environment that we have not seen since basically Vietnam. Like, what was that like, you coming up as an experienced Marine, coming into the Army National Guard, going onto the active side? Because it's a very unconventional career path.
Yeah. Well, the first time around, you know, gave me a little bit of an eye opener about the National Guard, especially coming from the Marine Corps to the National Guard. You're like, what the hell is going on here? Because things are just not the way that they were in the Corps.
It's very different.
And also considering I came from a support MOS, like I said, I was not by choice. Well, yeah, kind of, sort of, but it was my only choice, super pogue. And then all of a sudden finding yourself as a tanker. And as we like to call ourselves then, twats, because we were tankers without tanks, you know, and we were attached to a Marine Corps unit at Al-Taqaddum, actually. And I would have been a glorified fobbit just pulling guard duty at ECPs or guarding third country nationals that drove the supply trucks, that sort of stuff. But every chance that we had a chance to go outside the wire, I volunteered for it and raised my hand. And I didn't really see too much action. We saw, you know, a bunch of craters from IEDs happened and blah, blah, blah. But we didn't see a lot of action that time around. And I was still like, you know, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I wanted. I wanted to come in and kick ass and take names. So that's why I volunteered for active duty. And, you know, sometimes you're going to be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
So I found out real goddamn fast that being in combat arms in regular Army is not the same thing as the National Guard. And that's not to insult anybody serving in the Guard. Okay, your service is valuable, but the guys who did see a little bit of action here and there when they were in the Guard, you know, they thought like, ooh, I've been somewhere and I've done something. Hey, congratulations. I mean, sincerely, you went out there and you served and you did what you had to do. But compared to what you went through when you were on active duty in combat arms, it's a whole different ball game. And we ended up in Ramadi. Now, for you guys who don't know,
Ramadi was a shit show. Yeah.
Yes. That was probably the most underreported action battle of the whole war. I mean, everybody, because the media was in Baghdad. So that's all they ever talked about, except for the one time that they shifted their attention to Fallujah for a little while. But they never made it all the way over to Ramadi, where the shit really went down. And that was the capital of the Anbar province. And that was where all the insurgents were at. That's where Al-Qaeda in Iraq that ended up morphing into ISIS came from. And that's who we were fighting with.
Yep.
We got lucky because the unit that was right before us that we ripped out with, they started the precursor, if you want to call it that, for the Anbar Awakening. They were the ones who started working with the local sheikhs and started to get them to shift and to be on our side. And so by the time we got there, that was just barely the situation. So it was still deep shit combat. In my first month after we started going outside the wire, I got hit 3 times. My tank got blown up by IEDs 3 times. Once, we don't even know how the hell the track stayed together. There was only like one freaking track segment that was left, one track pad basically that was holding the track on, and we were able to get back to base, and then we had to pull all of our sensitive items off that tank and jump on our hot tank and go back out. And then after that, you got to spend all your time going back and repairing your own tank and getting it back up. So that was quite a struggle. And then we had the time where we hit an IED and it blew the track completely off. We had to have an 88 come out. Another tank towed us back while the 88 drug what was left of our track back to the base. And same thing, we had to hot seat another tank, go back out there. I saw the most combat action of anybody in our unit, not directly me being attacked. So we went through the 3 IDs. We went through a couple of firefights where we were attacked. But I was also in elements that were attacked. So the tank right in front of us was our commander on one mission that we were on. He got hit. We don't know if it was an RPG or an IRL. I will just say this. I don't want to give away too much information because it can still be used. But it did penetrate the hull. And luckily there was no casualties, because luckily that day the loader was not on the tank and they were running a 3-man crew. If he had been in the tank, he would have been killed. Been out there numerous times supporting other vehicles during recoveries. Had the vehicle right. So if you see in what's that movie? American Sniper. So when they were dividing up the city, and we were going out there and providing security while the engineers were putting up all the T-walls and the T-barriers and all that so we could divide the city up, and they had IEDs every freaking where. And this guy was riding in our tracks, so how the hell we didn't get blown up and he did, I don't know. But his tank got coated out. It got blown up so bad. And I still know the guy who was the driver, and he still got TBI, PTSD, all sorts of stuff. So I just got lucky, and I never got a scratch on me, but I saw quite a bit. And
that's pretty lucky being a tanker, man, because during that time in Iraq, man, they were coming out with the new EFPs from Iran, the explosively formed penetrators, for those guys who don't know. Guys were getting messed up with molten copper, you know what I mean? So the fact that you walked away unscathed, even despite all the shit you saw, is pretty lucky, and somebody upstairs must like you.
Yeah, I guess God likes fools, and I must be the dumbest motherfucker on the planet. I don't know. I just got lucky.
So, I mean, and tell me, your experience after that. I mean, you've got all this combat experience. I mean, I read your bio. You had lots of interesting interactions with leadership, over time. To you, especially as a combat veteran who saw these things, what is your definition of a leader, and what were the people that you looked up to and something you could pass on down to the younger guys that came after you?
I mean, a leader to me is as simple as it can be, is that somebody who takes care of their people. That's it. If your whole focus is taking care of your people, and that means you're going to be, I don't mean to say treat your troops like children, but with that same love and care that you would treat your own children, treat your subordinates, treat your troops. And that means that you have to make sure that you are on top of your game, that you're technically and tactically proficient, that you are doing all the things that you need to do, but you have to also take care of them, because in the bottom line, they're the ones who are going to take care of you. And if you're a shit leader, then you're probably going to have mission failure, and no one's going to back you up when you need them. Right. That's why in Vietnam people got fragged, so take care of your people. That's the number one thing I would say out of being a leader. And what was your other question?
And the qualities you saw in these people, and what were some of the things you could pass on to the guys that came up behind you, like the individual specific leadership qualities that you thought were the best from your experiences in the Guard and active duty and the Marines.
The number one thing, it's very hard in the environment that's in the military these days. Hopefully now it's changing, now that we have a different Secretary of Defense and a different mindset of returning back to basics. And
it's for me, it's because you served under the same guys I did, right?
Yep.
Bush, Obama, Trump 1, Biden, and now Trump 2, right? And I will tell you, so I experienced the same type of bureaucracy and the same type of insanity that you did under these people.
Yeah.
And, they all have their pros, they all have their cons, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I've had my best experience under the current president, because everything else. But I will give it to Pete Hegseth, because I've met him personally, is that he does emphasize as a frontline leader, captain, that he's not a general. He's not a board member of Raytheon.
Good. Thank God.
Good. Exactly. I trust some people in the E4 mafia more than I trust that are working in the DoD now, right? But he does want to put an emphasis on physical fitness standards, getting back to basics, fundamentals, and they're all worried about this stupid Signal chat. I'm like, bro, do you know how much stuff was on Signal chat when I was overseas? Like, the military runs on Signal now because nobody wants to program a SINGARs anymore. So
yeah, right.
and it's like, screw this fucking crypto. I'm just going to go to Signal. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's right, but I'm just saying, you guys think that was bad? I saw way worse. You know what I mean? In terms of whatever. Anyway, but like, we have a chance now to revert back to a time in the military that takes our standards and our professionalism and our leadership seriously. And it's good that there's an initiative to actually hold leaders accountable that failed during the global war on terror and actually get some revamp. But I think one of the reasons why, because I was involved in the evacuation of Afghanistan, I got me and my friends got 36, 38 people out, one of them being our classmate's family. But this is one thing that Trump really hasn't touched yet, and it's, he said in North Carolina during his rally, on noon, on my inauguration day, I want the resignation letter of every officer involved in Afghanistan. That didn't happen, right? So that's one thing he hasn't held up to yet. But I think he's waiting to after his first 180 days to start getting into the really contentious issues, because there's a lot of veterans like you and myself that are going to be demanding accountability for the failure of these milquetoast officers and NCOs that have plagued our military, all the way from Iraq to Afghanistan to the whole COVID-19 pandemic thing where they kicked out tens of thousands of service members for no reason. I have an issue where they falsified my mental health records because I went after a 3-star general, and I'm still dealing with that 15 years later. And then you also had a bunch of serious medical conditions come up. So, let's go into the sunsetting of your career. You were, on the way out and doing all your combat deployments. You've done all the things you wanted to do when you came back in, but then something else happened to you, and this is why we connected in the first place.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? It sucks because all I ever wanted to do was deploy. I just wanted to do my damn job. So, I did one deployment with the National Guard, stepped it up, did another deployment, and we went over there during the surge time frame. So we got extended. So we were there, an additional 3 months on top of our normal 12-month tour.
Yeah.
And then as we came up working our way toward our next deployment, which was going to be Baghdad as an advise and assist mission, beyond my control, they came out with a policy that said that, and some people roll their eyes about this shit, but it's serious. Sleep apnea. So I didn't get diagnosed until after those 2 deployments. And trust me, people fucking hated me. They did not want to be anywhere near me when it came time to sleep, because my sleep apnea would cause my snoring to be so loud they couldn't get any rest.
But that sleep apnea is actually a super common disability claim within our generation of war.
Right.
Like, I had major issues with my hormones because my nasal passages and everything got clogged off. I was almost sleep apnea, but they had to go in and cut a bunch of scar tissue out of my face from sucking in all those burn pits when I was over there. Because working Intel, they were still burning shredded paper and diesel barrels.
Right.
And this is 2021, right? You know what I mean? We're still doing dumb shit like that. So people don't understand, like, oh yeah, sleep apnea this, or you didn't get your leg blown off, so it doesn't count. Not true, man. Like, anyone who's been outside the United States, especially in the Middle East during these times, like, there is so much pollution and garbage, and you're exposed to so much stuff just sucking in the air that it is very, very easy to develop sleep apnea in these conditions.
And so what happened was, I tried, they CENTCOM made us put in a waiver, and they were like, nope, we're not approving you. You can't come over. So I ended up having to do Rear D, and they ended up putting me in charge of guys going through what was a pilot program back then of IDES, the Integrated Disability Evaluation System. And so that'll come up later in the story. So I ended up, putting 50 guys through this pilot program, because back then, the way it was, if you got put put through the med board in the Army. Then the Army did their thing. They came up with their ratings for you, and see you later, bye. Then after you got out, it was your job to go to the VA and then file your claims all over again with the VA.
Such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with that stuff now. It's such a it's so ridiculous. It's so bad. I'm so glad Trump is firing. I was like, oh my God, Trump is coming in and firing 40,000 VA people. I'm like, good. Hopefully we're the people that they left me on the phone for 6 hours to even schedule an appointment 2 years after my deployment. Thank God I have civilian health insurance. Otherwise, like, I would have nothing to. I had like 4 major surgeries when I came back, and I had to use my civilian health insurance because, like, literally, if I was still waiting on the VA, I'd still be waiting for surgery right now.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. So what ended up happening was, I tried everything I could because I wanted to get back to being to a deployable status. They would have allowed me to stay in, but I would not have been deployable. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm here for. So
But the transgender people are deployable, Carl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you got combat, sleep apnea, all this other stuff. You're trying to stay in, but they're letting people in who need chemical injections and steroid injections and hormone injections, and they still can't deploy because you can't have that medication in theater.
Right. Well, you see all this beautifulness right here in front of you?
You're a man.
This is not what I was born. This is not what I was born with. Okay.
Yeah.
What I ended up having to do, because I don't know if what you had was a triple UP where they had to go in and scrape, excess tissue out and remove your uvula and all this other bullshit. Well, they couldn't do that with me. My physiology didn't support it. So the only other option was for me to basically have my face rebuilt. Yep. So they did what was called a bimaxillary Lafort 2, which translates into they cut my jaws away from my skull, moved them forward about 5 millimeters or whatever the hell it was, and then bolted everything back into place.
Perfect.
Then they turned around and did a septoplasty, a rhinoplasty. They did a submental freaking liposuction. I mean, they did a genioplasty. They moved my jaw forward and down. So I was about 3 hours away from Fort Gordon, where they had Eisenhower Army Medical Center, which is like the I forget the name of the Walter Reed of the South. Okay.
Right. Yep.
And that's where the Army trains its maxillofacial surgeons. So it was kind of a good fit because they needed a guinea pig and I needed the surgeries. So there you go. So they basically rebuilt everything that's going on up here in the effort to try to reduce my sleep apnea to the point that I didn't have to rely on a CPAP machine. Therefore, I didn't have to be plugged in all the time, and therefore I could deploy. Guess what? Didn't freaking work. So I went through all that. I went through all that recovery. And then finally, I got back to the line. It was like 2009, 2010 time frame. And we were training up for Afghanistan.
Perfect.
And so I started to have problems with my right hand, my right arm. I would get this tingling feeling, this feeling of fire going up and down my arm. And it was getting to the point where it started to interfere with my ability to operate the tank and do my duties.
Yeah.
So it ended up I had radiculopathy, where I had compression of some of my spinal discs. So fuck me.
Driving in a tank does that.
Yeah, so I couldn't deploy. Well, wearing all that goddamn battle rattle and jumping around. You got to understand too.
You had the old school shit. You still had the flap over body armor before they even came out with the single plate carriers.
Yeah, we didn't get lighter
equipment.
I didn't even have IOTV. I still had the freaking zip lock across the front, the Velcro.
Yeah.
Also take into consideration that at this point in time, I'm pushing like 44, 45 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like 40 and 42 during my deployments. So of course, doing all that stuff that's going to break off somebody who's in their 20s definitely broke me off.
Absolutely.
I tried to recover from that even, and to drive on and to continue on and get back on the line and get back, into the fight. About this time that, this is when Iraq got shut down. And everything was going stupid in Afghanistan. The Army was going back garrison, and leadership was just gone to shit. And I saw the writing on the wall. And so when I had the option to go into the IDES system myself and to be medically retired, that's what I opted for. Now, considering I was already past what should be the sanctuary mark, They should have allowed me to finish up my 20 years and then retired me. But a lot of things came into play because I had all that broken service and different, from the Marine Corps, Marine Corps Reserve, National Guard, Army, whatever. They couldn't seem to figure out their math, and they thought I'd been in a lot less time than I had. They were shorting me like 6 years of service, and I came back and proved all that. But somehow, some way along the line, they just made up their mind. They were going to get me out one way or the other. And so they basically violated my due process. There's a program called Continuation on Active Duty. And I wasn't even made aware of that because of the fact they didn't know I had X number of years in. They never did the mandatory counseling. I had to find out about it while basically I was starting the initial part of my checkout process. And when I was doing that, somebody pulled me aside. They're like, hey, you requested COAD? I didn't even know what it was. Mm-hmm. So they gave me a little bit of extra time to request it. At first, my unit was not supportive of it, but I convinced them that it was the right thing to do, and they went ahead and put the request through. So this had to go all the way through brigade with recommendations. So It wasn't like the unit was like, well, this guy's a piece of crap. No, they pumped me up and they supported me. But the problem was it went up to the Physical Disability Agency. Then it went across to Human Resource Command. The Human Resource Command pulled a trick. Instead of doing their job and having a set of balls and saying, no, screw you, or roger that, go ahead, you can have your continuation on active duty, they returned it with no action taken. And their justification was, they said I wasn't qualified to request COAD, and what they were hanging their hat on was in the regulation that says you cannot request COAD if you are a danger to yourself or others.
Right.
Now here's the trick. Nowhere in my records, nowhere in any of my notes, nowhere in anything, even my freaking package from my med board that was that thick, did a medical provider say I was a threat to myself or others. Matter of fact, they specifically stated otherwise. They specifically stated he is not a threat to himself or others.
That's their go-to excuse, though, because they did the same shit with me. Like, I never even met with a psychiatrist, and they said I had 7 major psychological conditions and that I was going to kill myself and that I'm nuts. And I'm like, so how is that possible if I've never even been to a psychiatrist? And like, nope, that's the way it is. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's like their default reasoning to start screwing people over. Because like I said, and what you're experiencing in this as well, is that it is very hard to disprove that. And unless you're willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars like I have, over $250,000 in legal fees to fight this just to get your name rectified and to be vindicated, it's insanity. And most soldiers, Marines, Airmen, Guardians, Coast Guards, people, like, they don't even put up with it. They just walk away and hope for the best because they can't afford to put up with this, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what happened there was I was on rear D again, unfortunately. And so there was an engineer captain who was put in charge of our rear D. And he didn't even know who the hell I was, but he was required to fill out a form, stating about me and blah, 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 blah. And he included something in the narrative that is not even supposed to be there. There's not supposed to be anything dealing with medical information whatsoever in the narrative. It's just supposed to be about you and your duties and your ability to perform your duties, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
He included something in there that indicated I could be a threat to others if not treated properly.
Sounds like unlawful command influence.
There you go. So there you go. You have a commander who didn't even know me put this into a document, and that's what Human Resources Command decided to go with.
Correct.
What some combat engineer captain who didn't even know me put on a form, compared to the reams, the literal reams of paperwork that they had from medical providers that said the exact opposite. They did the convenient thing and they found something to nail me with and say no. Now, the first few years, I didn't know any better. They said, that's it, too bad, screw you, go away. And it just so happened by chance, my former battalion commander from that tour in Ramadi, he had retired after that tour. Mm-hmm. And he ended up going to law school and became one of those military justice lawyer types.
Yep.
And so he happened to just let all his guys know, hey, by the way, I'm doing this now in case anybody's interested. So I hit him up and I was like, hey, what about this? And he took my case. And so he's the one who's been representing me. And what happened was we ended up going to the Army Board of Corrections for Military Records.
My favorite place to go.
Yes.
I've only been like 6 times now.
It took like 2.5 years of them reviewing my records. And so everything that was in my original paperwork, plus everything that my lawyer added to it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was such a clear-cut case. And I'm not talking about they just looked. This was 2.5 years they dug through my files.
And then they're going to say you time out because you didn't file it within 6 years or something like that.
Actually, they did say that because you have 3 years and I was over the limit. But there was
But they take 2.5 years to review it. So it's like, what are you doing? Like,
well, they allowed me.
Well,
you have like 3 years even to file. So I had passed that limit even to file. However, they waived that, which is not uncommon. They waived that based off of the letter that I had received saying you have no other options. You're all done. So that was like proof that my lawyer could say, hey, he didn't know any better because they told him he couldn't. There was no other options. Mm-hmm. So they allowed it. Then it took them all this time to review it. And then they came back unanimously, ruled in my favor. And they said, put him back on active duty administratively from X month to X month so that he can get his retirement, and then pay him his back pay from then until this date, and then start paying him forward. Okay, that's what the board recommended. Now,
I can get to the complications of this though.
Go ahead.
No, because I'm literally experiencing this right now again for the 5th or 6th time, and I have to go back to the board again. So even though I went to the President of the United States, I went to 10th District Court, I sued these people, I basically won, and then the board, they made a ruling, and then they hid the ruling from me and didn't tell me while I was in court, which is also illegal. It's called a Brady violation. Mm-hmm. And they've ruled that there is no justification that Adam Dorito's mental health record should state these things. There's no evidence that this doctor can prove that he met with her and vice versa. So therefore, all these conditions and everything must be removed from his record. However, just like you're experiencing, this is a recommendation that the board makes to the Secretary of the Army. In your case, it's the Secretary of the Air Force. Now, what people don't understand is even though you've been through this entire process and you've spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars doing all these things, it's just a recommendation. And if the Secretary of the Army doesn't want to sign off on it and just let you go into the ether, that's what happens. And that's currently what happened to me when I came back from deployment under the Biden administration is that even though I won my board, the Secretary of the Air Force refused to make a decision, and Kendall at the time, and even though I won, refused to justify fixing my case. So now they came back and they made another argument saying that, never mind, we're backtracking, we still think he's crazy, and this is now under the Trump administration, so you now have to apply for the Air Force Board of Corrections and Military Records again and restate your case, but also you've timed out, it's been over 6 years, so this case is null and void. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, it's been 15 years. 15 years, and I've already proven it multiple times. It's black and white, just like your case is. But because we have these little idiosyncrasies about like specifications and who's in charge, and this is actually why I started the Dorito Act, right? The Dorito Act states that it is illegal, and this is very specific, but it actually goes in tunes with your case. It is illegal for commanders and NCOs and military personnel and civilian DoD personnel to falsify medical records in retaliation for reporting sexual assault, harassment, misconduct, blah, 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 blah. Right? And with that, we are actually able to, instead of using just the DoD review board system, we are actually able to charge them in civilian courts under HIPAA, because those laws already exist, right, and hold those military doctors and leaders and officers accountable. Because if somebody goes into your medical records and falsifies them in the civilian world, they go to jail, or you can sue them for a lot of money. You can't do that in the military because of that specification. So the Dorito Act actually resolves your case too, ironically, right, is where they make a recommendation, they have to stick to that recommendation. If they don't, they can be held liable, and you can receive justice in that. And this is not the only case I've heard of, Carl. Like, I've talked to hundreds of people since I started podcasting, like 7-8 years ago now. And it is insane that, you know, even though you've been sexually assaulted, you had combat injuries, you know, all these other things, is that the way the military circumvents responsibility for its actions against its service members is actually messing with your medical records, because it is the hardest thing to change and justify, and it costs so much money and so much time that most people give up. And the military is just betting that you stick a shotgun in your mouth in the VA parking lot and call it good and make it cheaper for them, or they just want you to go away and never try. And that's something we need to change collectively, Carl. And like, your story is heartbreaking listening to this, because it's like, oh, there we go, here, another medical record issue. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing. We don't even know each other, and it's the same exact story I hear all the time.
Yeah, well, you just gave a preview of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
So the board sent its recommendation up to the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Medical Review Boards. So this is the guy who seated the board.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the guy who's basically supposed to take the recommendation of the board and rubber stamp it. Well, here's the thing. Because my lawyer had done such a good job, and because my records were so clear cut, do what they almost always do and ask for an advisory opinion.
Oh, here we go. They did the same thing to me.
So what happened was, so the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army decided on his own to request an advisory opinion.
Yep.
And he had a master's of professional health. So someone who's never seen a patient, never treated a fucking patient.
Never saw you.
Go into my medical records and basically find a crime. You know what the saying goes, you find a crime and blah, blah, blah. So they went looking for a reason to throw me out. And they went in and cherry picked things from my session notes. I mean, they actually went into my session notes.
They did the same exact thing to me, Carl.
And then they quoted things that I had said in sessions with a provider with no context to explain why I said those things. And then they even went and started talking about, well, we don't understand why he had a weapons restriction put on him during the time that he had a profile of dealing with sleep apnea. If they had bothered to ask or they had bothered to look, they would see because they had me on basically anti-narcolepsy medication to keep me awake. So basically they didn't have a choice. They had to put me on a weapons restriction during that time, which I really didn't need that fucking medication at the time anyway.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of bullshit. Now this is where it really goes for. So at the time I was retired. I was living in Hinesville, just outside of Fort Stewart. And I didn't even know this existed until it happened. There was an incident. My wife is foreign born. English is her second language. And she was talking to a neighbor, and she said something in a way that alarmed the neighbor, but she didn't mean it in the way the neighbor took it.
Yeah, it's context.
The neighbor ended up calling the cops. The cops came over to the house, talked to me and my wife. We're both like, what? Nothing's going on here. But because it was in a military town, the command at Fort Stewart has an agreement with the civilian authorities. So anything hits the blotter, even for a retiree, if it hits the blotter, then it goes up to the family advocacy program, and you have to come in and get interviewed by the family advocacy program. I basically was like, fuck you, I'm retired, you have nothing to do with me. And they're like, well, if you don't come in and talk to us, we'll ban you from the base. Now,
I hate these people.
I was like, are you
so
fucking
much.
kidding me? So you're gonna cut me out. You're gonna cut me out of my medical care. You're gonna cut my child off from his medical care. That's your game. Okay, I'll come in and talk to you. And we came in and talked to family advocacy, and they cleared us. They were like, there's nothing wrong. Nothing happened. This is no big deal. This is a nothing burger. Well, that's what they fucking used as part of their justification. They were like, after he retired, there was an alleged incident that could have shown that he was in fact a threat to himself or others.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Which wasn't proven at all, and I was already retired. But they put that in the opinion, and based on these things where they cherry picked comments that I made during my sessions, they were like, well, he had a weapons restriction for a period of time. And then years after he retired, it was reported he possibly, maybe, kind of, sort of could have thought about, had a dream about being violent to someone that never happened. And that's what they used to override the findings of the board. So, and again, they would send you a letter saying, you don't have any options. Guess what? Fuck you. I sure do. Now we're in the federal court fighting them over that shit.
So aggravating.
And here's what's really fucked up. So we go to the federal court. Now, this whole time, let me back up. They sent me a letter saying the board found in your favor. And then as you read down, it says, but we were overruled by the DASA, and go fuck yourself. You don't have any options. So we ended up going to federal court. And the whole time we kept asking them. I involved my congressman, my lawyer, we kept asking the Army, what is your justification for overriding? And they would never tell us. So
Nope.
they're withholding documents.
Yeah, it's a Brady violation.
That advisory opinion, they were withholding it.
Yep.
Then when we got to court, the DOJ lawyer who's representing the Army, working with the Army's legal team, was a total idiot. And he actually got his face torn off by the judge right there in the courtroom. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't. And so it took about 9 months for the judge to come out with his order, 32-page order, basically telling the Army, the DOJ lawyer, you're fucking stupid, you're incompetent, your arguments don't add up to nothing, and you're an idiot. If you continue with this case, you're going to lose. However, it's your right. What do you want to do? And so the Army asked for an additional 30 days, supposedly the DOJ lawyer, so he can go back and talk to everybody in the approval chain to get approval to go ahead and just stipulate the findings of the court and settle. Instead, they decided to fight. So then they went through the whole rigmarole, and now they all of a sudden, when they came in with their documents to fight, guess what popped up out of nowhere after all these years? That advisory opinion they've been hiding from me. They tried to introduce it as evidence.
So they did the same exact thing to me, right? So I won my court case. Administration swaps over. They still haven't given me my degree back. They still haven't fixed my medical records as they were ordered to. Then magically they come out with another, and this just happened in January, February timeframe. So I actually have like another 90 days to refile for this. And I'm being very strategic with it. But they came back with another advisory opinion saying that, well, never mind, we changed our minds. He actually is still crazy. And how they tried to do that was so keep in mind, I have been in the military for over like 13 years now with a combat deployment. I was in special forces with a secret security clearance. I'm also an intelligence sergeant and a soon-to-be 38 Gulf captain with a top secret TSSCI, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I had to go get a professional, like I paid for it on my own. It was like $8,000. I had to go pay for my own psychologist to evaluate, is he actually what the Air Force says he is? The doctor came back and said, absolutely not. There's no evidence of this. The advisory board came back and said, well, we don't agree with that because at the Air Force Academy, he didn't like people. So because of what happened 15 years ago after they screwed him over and destroyed his life, and we took away his commission and his degree and embarrassed him in front of his family, we don't care that he served honorably for 13 years. We don't care that he paid all this money to have a professional psychologist actually do an evaluation to prove us wrong. And we also don't care and are just going to completely ignore the fact that he is a TSSCI and is extremely scrutinized for what he does. We are rescinding our judgment, and we're now going to say, come and fight us again at the Air Force Board of Corrections and Military Records.
Yeah. And
like,
so,
insane.
Yeah.
And you know this process because you can't go to the President of the United States, you can't go to Congress until you exhaust all administrative remedies. So they're forcing me to start their circle over again, go back to the Air Force Board of Corrections and Military Records before I can go back to Congress, before I can go back to federal court, before I can go back to the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States. Like, and I've done this for 15 years, and they're just trying to restart the circle all over again. And it sounds like you, for some reason, Carl, you're experiencing the same exact situation.
Pretty close. So where we're at now is that my attorney. So they've now, they said, okay, we're gonna fight this, and then the judge gave them X number of days to introduce, what they're, because it's all going to be a trial on the record. It's not going to be like in the courtroom, so they have to like write everything out and submit it. So again, they asked for another additional 30 days, and they got their additional 30 days, and then they finally put in what they want. My lawyer already advised me their arguments are just straight up trash.
Right.
I'm going to blow them away. And on top of that, he found case law to support that is illegal. After the board has already seen all your records and the board makes their recommendation,
Yep.
It is illegal to go back now after the fact and try to introduce other evidence.
Yeah, they don't
which
care.
is that's what the DASA did. He tried to go get that advisory opinion after the fact. So that's going to get thrown out. Okay. So that's gone. So now they don't have a leg to stand on. And on top of that, they want to talk about a weapons restriction or the fact that I could be a threat to myself or others. So riddle me this, Batman. Why did the FBI approve my concealed carry license? And why do I conceal carry on a regular basis? And so they have nothing to stand on. So right now, where we're at in the case is my lawyer is putting in his argument basically against their argument. And then the judge, then they'll get a chance to rebut. And my lawyer will get a chance to rebut, and then the judge will get it, and he'll have to go through everything and decide. So this could drag out from another year or two.
Yep.
And one of the things that the judge could say, like in your case, he could say, okay, send it back to the board. But chances are not going to be that. If you look on X, the thread that is pinned to my profile, it has every bit. It has right now I'm up to like 22 posts, and I keep adding to it as things go on to keep it as a real narrative.
Yep.
And it explains everything, and it's got links in there. So it's got a Google link in there, so you can go download and read the court document yourself, the 36-page order. And if you read that, it's pretty clear that the judge basically said the recommendation of the board is ironclad, and that you cannot overrule it. So going toward what you're talking about with the Dorito Act, when my case is all said and done, my case is probably going to be precedent setting. And so it's probably going to work in your favor.
Maybe I can use yours before mine.
Yeah, you probably will be able to. It just depends on how this all comes out. You never know when you go to court. And so all I've been doing for God knows, over a year now, but especially since like that last November when I first found out about the ruling and what was going forward, I have been appealing to everybody and their brother. Through email, on X, local journalists, national journalists, every one of these networks you would think that have, they talk about how supportive they are of the troops and
oh my God, don't even get me started on these clowns.
But Fox News, One American Network, Newsmax, all these guys, every personality, every journalist under these guys, I have tried to email. I've tried to get their attention on X. I have gone to the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Army, the President, the Vice President, everybody and their fucking brother, trying to get, because all I need is for just one person to pick up a phone, call the fucking Department of the Army and say, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you fucking with this guy? End this case now. All we need is for the Army to agree to end the case. And if they would do that, then the judge would say, okay, award to Carl, boom, and then I would get my money and we'd be done. That's not even talking about, though, the fucking legal fees I'm going to end up getting stuck with, and all the taxes I'm going to end up having to pay on back pay. I'm going to end up having to hire a goddamn tax attorney or an accountant to help me figure that shit out. And all the credit cards and all the loans I've had to take over the years to keep us afloat. And so once that money comes in, so we're probably over $300,000 in back pay owed to me right now.
Easy.
It will evaporate. It will fucking be gone.
Yeah, you'll be lucky if you're at net zero after, because you're in the same exact situation as me, man. I've taken out loans, I've consolidated this, I've refinanced my house, because you're and people always say, and it's like it's a sunk cost fallacy. Like, why do you keep spending money on this stuff? It's like, because you know what? My reputation and my honor and doing the right thing is important. And standing up and being a moral and ethical soldier, which is what I raised my right hand to do, to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the worst part is I ended up finding more domestic enemies than I ever did when I was overseas. And I tell people this quite often. I'm like, I at least respected the guys I fought overseas, because they had their, we didn't agree. I'm still going to blow you up with a drone, run you over with a tank or whatever it is. But at least you stuck to your principles as a nicest fighter or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
But these scumbags in Congress, like, I have been to every single Colorado congressman. I'm still waiting to see if the new ones, Gabe Evans, Jeff Hurd, and Jeff Crank, are going to do what they said they were going to do. Lauren Boebert, I support the troops. And then it's like, so what about me? And they're like, yeah, but you're like a straight white guy. You know what I mean? You don't make us look good. You don't fit the profile. You're not going to, help us get reelected and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's absolute fucking insanity, where you just need the Secretary of the Army to sign a piece of paper, and then it's over. It's done. Yeah. Just like me, I need the Secretary of the Air Force, Matt Lohmeyer, the new guy, who's actually an Air Force Academy 06 grad, and I'm hoping to try to set up a meeting with him in D.C. soon. But like, hey, Matt, I just need you to sign this piece of paper saying we agree with the board's decision, give him his back pay, give him his degree back, make him whole again, and I will walk away and continue serving in the Army and never talk about this again. You know what I mean? Just do the right thing. It's not hard.
Well, here's the trick, right? What they don't see is that, okay, when I got out, I was 90% disabled. It never should have been rated at 90, but it took me 5 years of fighting that to get finally rated at 100%.
Yeah.
And I have two special needs kids. Okay. My son is moderately autistic, has ADHD, and has what is called ARFID. A lot of people don't know what ARFID is. It's been around forever. They didn't have a name for it until a few years ago. It's avoided restrictive intake disorder. Basically, a lot of kids who have autism can get this because they have a lot of sensory things going on.
Yeah.
He's developed a fear of choking, and he can't get over it. He wants to eat. He cries sometimes because he wants to eat his old food that he loves, but he can't get over his fear. So he's been on a liquid diet since August of 23. He's been in fucking, he's been inside of a facility where they had to go to help save his life because he had lost so much weight. You know, one of those eating disorder clinics at 10 fucking years old. And, you know, he was in there with a bunch of teenagers, and don't even get me started on all the stuff that's wrong with our mental health system right now and all that shit.
So broken.
Where everybody is
so
in there
broken.
waving their trans flags and, you know, and trying to like pump up, you know, all these other things going on. You know, I'm an ally and all this bullshit instead of just treating people. So he ended up, you know, being 10 years old. He ended up getting assaulted by a teenager. He ended up getting injured due to negligence by one of the caretakers there. I mean, this boy's been through hell. My daughter, who is 6, we're trying to get a diagnosis for her right now, but because of her being isolated so much during the COVID years, they're having a hard time determining whether or not the symptoms that she shows is because of social isolation during those those key developmental stages, or is this truly ADHD or autism? So we don't know where she is. So it's very hard for us to try to get her a diagnosis and therefore get her a you know, the accommodations that she's going to need at school, to get her an IEP, blah blah blah. You know, so it's a lot of things going on. And now talking about the VA, my wife went to school. Like I said, she was from Peru. She had a degree in biochemistry in Peru. When she came here, that degree meant nothing. She used my GI Bill to go back to school. And because we changed states, it added a year to it because she had to do a bunch of other prerequisites that Texas required that Georgia didn't.
Right.
And she ended up graduating with a degree in medical laboratory science. And she works at the local VA. It's a large VA facility here in San Antonio, and she works in the main lab as a medical laboratory scientist. So any sample that gets submitted, hair, urine, blood, skin, whatever, comes across her desk. She helps to, you know, identify, you know, do you have HIV? Do you have COVID? Do you have cancer? You know, she's the one who tells, you know, determines what the sample shows.
Right.
But she got hired in at second shift. So she goes to work at 3, gets off at midnight, which is, you know, it's wrought hell on our family life. And basically has made me a single dad. So I'm disabled and I'm trying to take care of 2 special needs children, mostly by myself. My wife wants to help. She wants to be involved, but, you know, she's working, you know, 5 days a week at the VA, you know, and at nighttime. So she's not here to help out. So if I had this fucking money, she would have options. Now she's working on her end to try to get that shift change finally, but that's, you know, a nightmare trying to get done. But if that doesn't work, if I had this money and we didn't have all this debt, she could quit and she could go get another job with a better schedule so she could help out. Or I could take that money and I could invest it in trying to find the best care for my kids on top of whatever TRICARE provides. But, you know, so they don't understand. It's not so much that they're jacking with me, which is bad enough.
They're messing with your family.
They're not only, they're messing with 2 young special needs children.
Yeah, and this is what it comes back.
How dirty can you get?
Well, I mean, this doesn't surprise me. We have no problem sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, $50 million in condoms to Gaza, you know, all this other stuff going on. But when it comes to the men and women that have served this country to do the right thing, they just refuse to do it. And this is something why not only is the Dorito Act important, not only is your case important in all these things, but this is why I started lobbying in Congress. I mean, I literally put on my dress blues uniform against my better judgment, started knocking on doors. Next thing I know, the Pentagon's calling, go, why is, at the time, Specialist Dorito with a ribbon stack with an Air Force Academy ring knocking on congressional doors? I sat there and went, I gave you guys the time and place to do the right thing and you refused to, and I'm tired and I'm exhausted. And this is still ongoing years later after that, right? And This is why I'm now the national vice chair of the American Veterans First Association with Jason Lawford in New York, because we are actually trying to find GWAT veterans to just run for office. Because if these people in Congress refuse to do their job, we can do it. I promise you. The men and women that I have served with over the last 15, basically almost 20 years, if you include the academy out there almost, we are more than capable of replacing you. We are trying to raise our families. We are, and I know a lot of our generation, like, well, we're worried about taking care of our families and taking the kids to soccer practice and making sure my wife can go on shift. And we don't have time to show up to local board meetings. So we now have the best of the worst, from city council, boards members, all these other things, state representatives, and they're terrible. They're terrible. They have no idea what they're doing. But these are the people that are in charge of your life. Like, actually, one of the interviews I did of 2 weeks ago was with Casey West. He's a Marine Corps CH-53 guy, got exposed to a lot of depleted uranium, has terminal brain cancer, stage 4, and he can't get a VA appointment because they keep giving him the circle jerk, and the guy just wants to have the best care possible, maybe be able to save his life with new technology. And this guy did his time. He did his time. He's 100% disabled, and he just wants to get a VA appointment in Denver, and they won't do it. And I had like 1,000 people call Brittany Peterson's office in Colorado District 7. And they're like, well, why is this Dorito guy doing this? I'm like, because you refuse to do your job. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Take away my rank again? Well, you already did that once. What are you going to do? Cost me another $100,000? Bring it on. I'm at the point where I don't believe in the sunk cost fallacy and the motion that not only you are doing, but what I'm doing, because I think this is a collective effort at this point, is because if we don't do anything, then why did we even join the military? It is our responsibility to defend the Constitution and defend American citizens and making sure they have these rights. And if that means I have to sacrifice a few more years dealing with clowns and suits, I'll do it. And I will piss off every single representative. I will make sure you do your job. I will write letters. I will do podcasts. I will annoy you until you do your job. And if you don't want to do it, I'll run for Congress. I'll find someone else to run for Congress. I will replace you. I will threaten to primary you. And nothing gets their attention more when you say, I'm going to get you voted out of office. I show up to meetings all the time saying, I'm going to cut your funding. I don't know how, but I'm going to find a way to cut your funding, and I'm going to find somebody else to replace you, right? Because you just need a signature. I just need a signature. And this all goes away. It is a drop in the bucket of what we are asking for. We are just asking for our records to be corrected, for us to be made financially whole, and they refuse to do it. They refuse to do the right thing. Like,
see, they don't understand that axiom, and I'll probably butcher it, but it's like, I'm not easily bothered, but when I am bothered, I usually take it too far. But I'm a firm believer in, you should have left me the fuck alone in the first place.
That's all you wanted to be doing. Like, I just wanted to be left alone. Like, I don't do I want to go to Washington, D.C. and lobby? No, I want to hang out on my farm with my dog. You know what I mean? Like, I have stuff to do. I want to just go to work and hang out with the guys and grab a few beers and go to a few concerts. Like, I don't want to be spending all my free time podcasting about broken humans because our government has absolutely failed in their responsibilities to do what they said they were going to do. And just like you brought up in the beginning of the podcast, nothing annoys me more than watching state representatives, federal representatives, senators, whatever. Oh, we're about the troops. Oh, we're about the troops. Yeah, you're about the troops until the troops come knocking on your door saying, hey, can I get this piece of paper signed?
Yeah. You didn't have any problem fucking cashing in on the military-industrial complex and getting all those kickbacks and campaign contributions. You didn't have any problems with that. Oh, you supported the troops then. Woohoo! But when they come knocking on your door saying, okay, it's like you knocked me up and now it's 20 years later and here comes this kid knocking on your door. Hey, Dad, guess what? There's consequences to your actions. And so you cashed in. You benefited. Now it's time to take care of your responsibilities. Okay. I'm not asking for much.
No, you're not.
I'm just asking for my fucking back pay. I already know that I can't get any interest. There's no interest involved. I paid a lot of interest on loans and on freaking credit cards, but I can't get reimbursed for that. I can't get anything for my pain and suffering. There's nothing I can get for that. All I can get is my back pay. And even then, my lawyer can get a pittance reimbursed to him for his legal fees. So I'm left on the hook for the rest. Yeah. So we're talking anywhere between $150,000 to $100,000 in legal fees that comes right off the top. Then, I've already done my research into the taxes. I can't go back over the last 10 years and amend taxes. No, the most I can go back is 3 years, so it's not going to matter. So I'm going to get hit in 1 year looking like I had a $300,000 windfall. So they're going to tax the living shit out of that. So by the time I get done paying an attorney, get done paying taxes, get done paying a freaking accountant to help me sort out all this taxes, I'm going to be left with enough to fucking maybe if I'm lucky, pay off my debts and then start getting my freaking pay. That's not justice. So even if I
No, it's
win,
not.
I'm still not getting justice.
No,
And
and
I've asked my congressman Chip Roy to look into introducing legislation to change the law to say that just like if you owe the government and they charge you taxes or they charge you interest, guess what? Same way, backward. If the government owes you money, they have to pay you interest.
I
And
agree.
to also say that to open it up for pain and suffering. So if the government does you wrong, like they've done you, like they've done me, that there is going to be a price to pay on top of whatever you get for their actions. And the government's not going to learn, the government's not going to change until they're held accountable. And the only way to hold them accountable is to take their fucking money.
No, exactly. And for me, it's like my back pay calculated for 15 years post-graduation from the Air Force Academy, the flight pay and everything else. I was supposed to be a Marine Naval Aviator because I cross-commissioned out of the Air Force Academy, is well over $2 million at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I even offered to sign an NDA. I said, I don't even care about the money at this point. I just want my degree back and I want you to fix my medical records and I'll sign an NDA. They still said no. Yeah. Because they don't want to admit they're wrong, right? Yeah. And what drives me absolutely nuts is that, and I said this before the other day, because the Colorado GOP had an election for all their state, leaders for the Colorado GOP, and they went back to electing the old boomers, and I sat there and just went, like, we had all these America First, younger people in there, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. But the problem is that I no longer trust anyone involved in the government that sent my generation to war for 20 years. Oh, just trust us one more time. We're going to make it, or we're going to fix this and bring it back. No, you just want to go back to doing backdoor deals, self-aggrandizing, helping yourself. It's time for people like us to be involved in government and start taking control. Like, I don't care, Carl, if you go run for the Board of Education, you need to start doing it tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, you need to do something in order to hold these people accountable, because they like their fancy titles. They walk around like, I'm the state representative. I'm a councilwoman. I'm like, I don't care. I don't even care about the retired E7 who he tried calling me out on X the other day. He's like, because he got elected as a state vice chair. He's like, well, I was an E7, and I'm like, yeah, you were non-combat deployed in Germany in the 90s, dude. Like, please don't talk to me about service. Yeah. And you had that fun little blurb about that crappy E7 that you won't even call him a sergeant first class, right? Same situation. And he's like, well, you want to know what? I want to know your commander's name at Fort Carson. I'm like, yeah, well, it's Captain Dorito, and also my commander was Tulsi Gabbard. So, why don't you reach out to her and ask her if she cares about your opinion? Because you can't, tailor a suit. You can't steam it. You look like absolute dog shit representing the Republican Party. And then you're sitting there not actively fighting for the veterans, not fighting for our farmers, our ranchers, our oil and gas workers. Guys just trying to make a paycheck, and then you still have these issues with the Dorito Act and Carl across the nation. Like, I work with guys down in Georgia now too on, trying to run for Congress as well. And it's just like, when is enough is enough? And apparently it's like, if not me, then who? Apparently, if you people don't want to do your job, I will gladly just go do your job for you, because it's not hard. Your only job as an elected representative at the end of the day is to say yes or no. That's it. I don't care about all the confluence and all these, these little debates. Your only job is to vote and say yes or no. And if you're not representing your constituents, and you need to leave. You just need to go. You need to leave.
Well, and I'm going to have to close out here in a second, but I just want to throw these couple of things back at you. So I was really hopeful. I understand it takes time, and there's, good God, they're trying to right the ship. They're trying to save the fucking country and everything else that they're doing right now. I get it. So I've got a little bit of patience. I'm trying to show a little bit of grace here, okay? Yeah. But it's disheartening. I fully support the J6 political prisoners getting pardoned. They deserved it. Yeah. I fully support everybody that got kicked out because they wouldn't take the jab against their beliefs. Yeah. And I support them getting some sort of action in their favor. I support these people that got put in prison because they were using their First Amendment rights and boycotting legally abortion clinics and got stuck in prison. I get all that. Yeah. And I'm happy for them that each and every one of them got a pardon. I understand there's maybe a few still out there because of state charges didn't get pardoned yet. And I hope they get their day and they get what they deserve. Okay. But I'm starting to feel like, hey, I thought maybe I was in the back of the line, but I'm starting to think nobody even sees me in the line anymore.
Yeah.
And that's getting a little bit disheartening. I'd really hoped for more than that at this point. I'm not going to name the candidate. It wasn't Trump, but I'll just go ahead and say it anyway. Vivek Ramaswamy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I campaigned for him. And you've seen him. He's been a very stalwart supporter, probably the most effective one there was for Trump during the campaign. And now he's off running for governor of Ohio.
Yep.
Trump gave him a full endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
I fully support Chip Roy and Ted Cruz. I'm trying to help my man Sheldon up in Dallas, who is trying to run against Jasmine Crockett. Okay,
She's
so
terrible.
I'm involved, in trying to help out politicians the best I can.
Because you're an American, that's what you need to do.
And last but not least, I'm going to just move the camera over a little bit. That right there is my service dog. I went out and got this service dog and raised him and trained him myself, basically in protest of the Pause Act, because it was such a fucking disaster and a bait and switch. It wasn't what the law was promised that we were supposed to get. In return for the VA having us go out and work at volunteers at service dog organizations to help them train service dogs, we were supposed to get the opportunity to adopt one of those dogs that we helped train, and it didn't happen. So I went out and started my own 5013C, and I started a service dog organization to help train service dogs for veterans, but
That's
I
great.
can't get anywhere with it. And it's basically, it just exists on paper. I can't do, can't go anywhere, can't do anything. Hell, I can barely fucking survive at this rate. So, Jesus Christ, man, I'm out here just trying to take care of special needs kids. I'm trying to get service dogs to veterans in need. And all you're doing is giving me the middle finger.
Yeah.
Come on, man. I say this, and I'll do this one last thing. This is an impassioned plea. Please, President Trump or Secretary of Defense or Secretary of the Army, hell, Pam Bondi even, because it's a DOJ lawyer, I'm asking you, please, from the bottom of my heart, do the right thing. Contact the Department of the Army. Tell them to drop this fucking case. Tell them to stipulate the findings of the federal judge and to settle this so it can be over and done, so I can move on with my life and so I can do good things for people and not have to be involved in this bullshit anymore.
Carl, I don't think you're asking for much. And ironically, you've had the most live streamers watching this podcast that I've ever had with any other interview. It's on X, it's on Rumble right now, it's on YouTube, and it's getting around right now. So this episode's officially going to post on the official, Libsyn, audio only and video on the 14th. But for all the live listeners, please share and connect with Carl, contact your congressman. The only way we're going to get things done is by annoying these people and forcing them to do it. Call their offices in D.C., call their local field offices or whatever. And Carl, before we sign off here, I just want to say you can reach out to me anytime. I'm glad to help you with whatever you're doing because we are united in this front. This is not only just about the Dorito Act, but this is all tied into the same stuff, right? Is just that we just want the right thing to be done for the guys and women who rose their right hand to defend the Constitution of the United States. We're not asking for much. We're just asking to be made whole. You sent us to war for 20 years. Do the right thing. It's not that hard. Yeah. It's not that hard. So
and I had already served. I had been in 10 years, been out 10 years. I had to kick and fight and scream just to get the fuck back in to get treated like this.
I know.
It's wrong.
Well, hang on for a minute. It's gonna download all the rest of your videos. But anyway, guys, this has been Carl Wheless with Adam Dorito on the Tuxes and Tomahawks podcast. We'll see you next week live on the show.
All right. Thank you so much.